Old wounds sting, but salt makes them lethal. Welcome to Marple Mysteries. I am your host, Harrington. Comment your city. I love hearing from you. Let's uncover Wolfe's new case. If you ask Nero Wolfe whether he minds having his afternoon beer interrupted, you'll get the same answer you'd get if you asked him whether the moon enjoys being jostled around by passing traffic. Contempt thick as concrete. I've seen him snap at orchid growers, senators, and even Inspector Kramer when they dared knock on our brownstone door between the hours of 4 and 6. Those hours belong to him, and I mean belong, like a private estate with barbed wire and a moat. So, naturally, that's when the doorbell rang. I was in my usual spot at my desk, typing up notes from the previous week's expedition. An adventure involving counterfeit handbags, a nervous heiress, and a taxi driver with too much information. Wolfe was upstairs in the plant rooms, communing with the orchids. The bell chimed, sharp and insistent, and I figured whoever it was either had gall to spare or a complete ignorance of Wolfe's household laws. I opened the door and found a woman who had both. She was late 30s, briskly dressed in a navy suit, her eyes the sharp, sleepless kind you get from years of working in rooms where people lie for a living. The kind of woman who could tell you exactly how long you'd been wearing that tie and why you shouldn't. She carried a leather briefcase clamped under one arm as if it were liable to make a run for it. "Mr. Goodwin," she said. "That's the name," I confirmed. "Yours?" "Ellen Cray." She hesitated, then added, "Attorney." "I need a word with Mr. Wolfe." I was about to give her the standard spiel. Appointments, fees, all inquiries through me, and preferably during business hours, when she pushed past like the air in the vestibule owed her rent. She didn't look like a woman who accepted speeches or bills without a fight. "You'll find Mr. Wolfe preoccupied," I said, shutting the door. And by preoccupied, I mean he's 40 minutes into his daily floral meditation and won't see you until his plants get tired of him. That'll be at 6 o'clock. If you'd care to wait, the chair by the globe is free. She didn't argue. She just sat, briefcase on her lap, fingers drumming, eyes fixed on the floor like she was cross-examining it. I didn't press her with questions. Experience has taught me that silence is as good as a crowbar when you want someone to start talking. Sure enough, after a few minutes, she spoke. "It's about my client," she said. "He asked me to come because he can't." "Why not?" "Because he's dead." That woke me up a little. I turned in my chair. "You're looking for Wolfe to investigate a corpse?" "He doesn't leave the house, in case you haven't heard. And besides, homicide isn't exactly his idea of a hobby." She looked up then, sharp as a pin. "It's not the death. It's what happened after she tapped the briefcase. Something was taken. From his apartment. Something he shouldn't have had. And you want Wolfe to... What? Find it." "I want Mr. Wolfe," she said, tightening her lips, "to understand why it matters, and then decide whether he'll help. Because if he doesn't, it may end up here." Her gaze flicked around the office, landing on Wolfe's empty chair. "And I have reason to believe someone is willing to make it personal." That was enough to make me sit up straight. Wolfe's brownstone is many things. A fortress, a temple, a zoo. But one thing it isn't is a place for outsiders to wave vague threats. If Ellen Cray was trying to bait the big man, she might get more than she bargained for. I glanced at the clock. 25 minutes to go. Wolfe would descend soon enough, and then we'd see if Ellen Cray's story was enough to lure him from his comfort zone. Personally, I doubted it. But the way her fingers gripped that briefcase, like it held the weight of 100 secrets, I had the feeling this was one bell that couldn't be unrung. Fritz's steps moved in the hallway above, which meant the orchids had had their audience and the monarch was on his way back to his throne. I told Ellen Cray she had about 2 minutes to adjust her tone from courtroom to living room. She gave me a dry look that said her tone had a full wardrobe. Wolfe came in at 6 on the dot, vast and pink and mildly affronted at the existence of any purpose on earth besides his own. He settled into the chair behind his desk with a small sigh that means the world has resumed tolerable proportions. Fritz followed, bearing the glass and the bottle, and I took my place to the right, where I can see the door and Wolfe can see me seeing it. Ms. Cray sat as if the air were on retainer. "Miss," Wolfe glanced at me. "Cray," I supplied. "Ellen, counselor." He inclined his head a quarter inch. "You have chosen an hour. I refuse to concede." "Proceed economically." She did. "My client, Adrian Voss, died last night. Heart failure at his apartment on West 72nd. I am executor of a preliminary will and counsel of record on several pending civil matters." After he was removed, there was a short interval before the apartment was sealed by the building's manager. In that interval, something addressed to you disappeared from his desk. A sealed letter. He had told me he meant to send it this morning. He did not get the chance, Wolfe sipped. "Phooey. Men who postpone letters deserve their fates. Why is its disappearance my affair? Because whatever was in that letter is what someone wanted enough to break the moment he died," she said, not leaning forward, which won her a point. "And because I believe whoever took it will assume you know its contents. If they come here looking, you think they will disturb me," Wolfe finished, flat as a paving stone. "That annoys me." "I can be more concrete," she said. "Voss had a business, Salt and Stone." She looked at me, maybe expecting a flicker. I gave her one. The place had 2 locations, good beef, good press, and a list price for a cocktail that would make a stevedore cry. "It's more than restaurants," she went on. "Branding, imports, private labels, a media arm, recipe books, shows and development. It's profitable and under multiple suits." Voss was adept at navigating ambiguity. He also kept notes, detailed ones. He kept them on paper, not the cloud, because he was a romantic about ink. "Romantics about ink are often romantics about lying," Wolfe said. "He wrote to me about what?" "He wouldn't tell me." She let that sit without apology. "He said it concerned a putrid arrangement that would rot the enterprise from within." His phrase. "He wanted you because he considered you incorruptible. He was wrong about many things, but not, I think, about that." Wolfe set the glass down. "He wanted me either as disinfectant or as decoration. And he delayed. Now he is dead, and you want me to act without premise." "You have a premise," she countered. "Someone removed a sealed letter addressed to Nero Wolfe." That is intrusion enough it was, and he didn't like admitting it. He swiveled a fraction to include me. "Archie, describe Adrian Voss." 48, I said. "Grew up in Astoria. Started as a line cook, married into money, divorced out of it. Opens Salt and Stone in Chelsea, expands to the Upper West Side. Clever with a camera, better with a checkbook. 3 partners, a chef with a profile, a silent investor, and a branding maven who says bespoke without blushing. Press paints him as a brawler with a palate. The Department of Health paints him as an occasional sinner." Wolfe turned back to Miss Cray. "Why did he trust you?" "I kept him out of worse trouble than he sought," she said, "and I told him when he was lying to himself." "You are still his counsel?" "For the estate, yes. For the living mess, I'm deciding." He closed his eyes for a shift of seconds, long enough to let the beer contemplate its destiny. Who entered that apartment in the interval between his removal and its sealing? She didn't consult notes. The building superintendent, under instruction from me. The chef partner, Julian Pryor, arrived and was kept in the foyer. He shouted. The branding maven, Roxanne Hale, called from downstairs and was told to wait. The investor, Hal Deming, sent his driver, who never made it up. The superintendent's nephew carried a carton of files from Voss's home office to a locked closet per my request, then returned it when I changed my mind. I have the list of what we moved. The letter wasn't among it. It had been on his desk at noon. I saw it. By 8:30, when I returned, with the medical examiner's van, it was gone. And you, Wolfe said, touched nothing else. I touched everything necessary and nothing unnecessary. That covers the law, I told her, not the burglary. Who else had keys? Voss's housekeeper. I've spoken to her. She was with her sister in Queens, and the alibi is solid. The superintendent, of course. I had a set. Voss's ex-wife returned hers 2 years ago, but I cannot certify there is no copy. Names, Wolfe said. It wasn't a question. She gave them clean, and I typed them to look busy. Julian Pryor, Roxanne Hale, Hal Deming, the housekeeper, Marta Gallo, the superintendent, Anthony Rizzo, his nephew, Dino, and the ex-wife, Veronica Dane, who acts in a streaming show where everybody whispers and drinks expensive whiskey. Wolfe made a face that said contemporary culture had failed him again. He lifted the glass, drained it with reluctant affection, and put it down as if it had misbehaved. You anticipate that someone will come here looking for what was written to me, he said. You expect me to tolerate the anticipation. I expect you to prevent the visit, she said. Find the thief. Or at least make the thief believe you already have fees, he said. She named a retainer that would have bought Fritz a new stove and left change for orchids. Wolfe didn't blink. He doesn't blink at numbers. Only adjectives get that reaction. He nodded once, which is as enthusiastic as he gets without butter. Very well, he said. You will deliver to Mr. Goodwin at 9 tomorrow morning the inventory you made, with every name and contact. You will answer his questions forthrightly. You will not inform the police of this theft until I permit it. If you have already done so, you will not do it again. Archie. Yes, sir. Tonight, you will walk past that building twice and regard who regards you. You will telephone Mr. Panzer and ask him to keep a hand ready. Do not employ him until I instruct Ms. Cray exhaled, and it was the first thing she'd done that suggested her lungs were human. If they come here, if they come, Wolfe said, they will encounter me where I am sovereign. That should suffice. It usually did, but after she left and the door had swallowed her heels, I crossed to the window and lifted a slat. A sedan idled half a block down with the kind of patience you learn in lobbies and alleys. Maybe it was waiting for a friend. Maybe it was waiting to see who had taken the hook. Do I take Fritz a message about dinner? I asked. No, Wolfe said. Take him the news that civility has suffered another wound. He will season accordingly. Salt in the wound, I said. He shut his eyes. Spare me the poet. Attend to the car. I told Wolfe I'd attend to the car, and he didn't dignify it with a reply. He didn't need to. When he says attend, he means, no, enough about it that I don't have to think about it again. I went to the front room, tilted the blind, and took a longer look. The sedan was a dull grey import that had learned perfect posture from a traffic cone. The driver's face was a smear behind glass, but the plate was cooperative. I stepped outside like a man freshening the air and crossed to the corner without glancing their way. You can look at a plate and not look at a plate if you practice. At the mailbox, I had no mail but acquired an alphanumeric memory. Back inside, I phoned a friend who does not like his name used in detective stories because his wife reads them. He works in a place where plates become names. And in our arrangement, I send him Broadway tickets he can't use, and he sends me information I can. He was at his desk and bored. When I gave the plate, he gave me a registered owner in Queens, a rental outfit that doesn't rent to tourists but to companies that like to forget they have drivers. That helps, I told him. It usually does, he said, and rang off to protect our friendship. I called Saul Panzer. If you've never heard of him, you haven't been in a mess worth having. Stand by, I told him. Client's name is Adrian Voss. Dead. We're interested in those who aren't. Someone may be keeping tabs on our door. Wolfe says don't move until he says, I can keep not moving as long as he likes, Saul said. Where are you going? West 72nd, just to breathe. If anyone follows, I'll let them. Play nice, he said, and hung up. I told Fritz I'd be erring on the side of appetite later and took a hat. The grey sedan stayed patient while I headed downtown on a bus and got off 2 stops early to let them believe they were brilliant. On the sidewalk, I paused to check a window display of shoes a man with sense wouldn't wear and caught the reflection of a grey car sliding by. Not ours, but a cousin. They were trading off or doubling up. Either way, someone had budget. The building on West 72nd had the kind of awning that thinks it keeps rain from touching important heads. Inside, a man at a desk guarded a bowl of orchids that had given up on life. The superintendent was not present to defend them. I said I was waiting for Miss Cray. He recognized the name, which told me she had made impressions, and told me she wasn't there, which told me he had practiced a sentence. I nodded like that had been my line too, and took a chair where I could see both the elevator and the street. If anyone in our circle was restless, they'd have to walk through one or the other. 10 minutes produced a man who could only be Julian Pryor, the chef partner. Chefs who are famous look like their knives aren't far away even when they are. He had arms that strain jackets and eyes that have seen too many open flames. He gave the desk man a short speech about keys and respect and the dead, and the desk man gave him building policy as if it had been written by Hammurabi. Pryor pivoted and found me with his glare. I know you, he said. You write checks for a fat man who doesn't leave his house. That makes me popular in some neighborhoods, I said. Archie Goodwin, I'm not here to discuss cuisine. You're not here at all, he snapped. Adrian is gone. The ambulance men took him like he was... He stopped and swallowed. He looked younger when he did that. We're trying to hold a business together without ripping it apart, and now the lawyer says we can't even get his notes. Notes he made about us. About me. I hear they were romantic, I said. Ink. He barked a laugh that had no humor in it. Ink is a trap. You write what you think when your brain is on fire, and some vulture reads it cold and calls it a confession. He stalked out, trailing a condiment's worth of resentment. In the glass, I saw the grey cousin idle by, again and drift on. If they were hoping I'd lead them to something, they were learning I had nothing to lead to but a lobby. Roxanne Hale arrived on a phone call and left still on it, tall, in winter white that dared the city to be dirty. When she passed me, I could hear her telling someone that optics saved companies and people who doubted that didn't belong in meetings. She had the look of someone who had never eaten a French fry in front of a camera. She didn't see me. PR seldom does until it has to. The investor's emissary showed next a driver whose jaw had learned to set itself while waiting on curbs. He brought condolences written in stone and asked for 10 minutes inside to collect a cufflink. He was given 12 seconds to leave instead. If he had practiced a second sentence, he didn't use it. He did look me over with interest, and I looked back without patent information. We were 2 men doing chores for other men. If we had traded lists, we could have swapped Wednesdays. The superintendent returned with sweat high on his collar and grief occupying his mouth. Anthony Rizzo is the kind of man who believes in locks because he has to believe in something. Miss Cray's not coming tonight, he announced to the room that wasn't listening. He saw me and made a decision. Are you with her? In the sense that I was told to sit and keep my opinions tidy, I said. You had a letter. It didn't survive the day he flinched before he scowled. I had a lot of things that didn't survive the day. I'm not talking to newspapers. Good, I said. They ask rude questions. I gave him a card with my name and Wolfe's address, no phone number. If you remember the hour you stopped believing in locks, tell me what you were doing with your keys. He pocketed the card the way a man pockets a thorn. We did what the lawyer said. We moved a box. We moved it back. I locked what I locked. If somebody with patience and fingers wanted something. Maybe they had them. Maybe they had both yesterday, I said. Maybe they had them for months. He looked at the desk orchids like they might testify and shook his head. I got work to do. He went through an employees-only door that couldn't have kept out an employee. I did what Wolfe had assigned and walked past the building again an hour later, pausing by a bodega that sold salt in 6 colors for 6 prices. The grey cousin was gone. A black Cooper had taken its place, the tint so dark it might have been painted on, and the man in it had the stillness you develop when you don't want to be seen wanting. I let him have my profile for a minute to feed him. If he wanted to follow, I'd make sure he didn't get indigestion. Back on 35th, the brownstone looked like itself, which is how it looks when Wolfe is inside thinking and Fritz is inside hoping. I took the steps and had my key out when my soul made a sound that didn't belong to granite. Fine, crunchy, like stepping in crystals. I bent with the key half-turned and pinched a grain between finger and thumb. It was coarse, translucent, irregular. A kitchen's pride, not a city's. Fritz buys it in sacks and turns it into something to remember. It didn't belong on our stoop. Inside, the hall smelled like dinner trying to cheer you up. I shut the door and held up the grain to the light. "Fritz," I called, "did we install a seasoning station on the steps?" He came, wiped his hands, and frowned at my pinch. "Not mine," he said. "Mine is cleaner." "Everyone says that," I told him and put the crystal on a sheet of paper. Wolfe doesn't like crumbs on his desk, but he hates uninvited flavors more. In the office, Wolfe had the look of a man who has chosen the word he will use to end an argument he hasn't started yet. I set the paper down where he couldn't miss it. He glanced, then at me. "Outside," I said. "Just a few grains." He closed his eyes to spare the language. "Salt," he said. "How apt." "It's either a message or a menu," I said. "Either way, someone knows where we eat." Wolfe didn't touch the paper, which was wise. He angled his head for Fritz, who came in with that particular frown he reserves for people who misunderstand ingredients. Wolfe told him to fetch the loupe from the drawer and the small black saucer from the cabinet. Fritz complied, and I tipped the grains onto the saucer with a pen blade. Under magnification, they weren't cubes. They were torn little plates, ragged at the edges, like someone had shaved a glacier. Fritz grunted. "Not kosher," he said. "Not mine. Mine is fleur de sel today, the Camargue. This is English or Cornish, the kind people put in a small tin to feel expensive." "Malden," I offered. Wolfe made a face that counted as concurrence. "The sort Salt and Stone sells in gift boxes," Fritz added, and that earned him a look from Wolfe that said he would be forgiven for reading a menu as long as he didn't try to charge for it. Wolfe opened his eyes to their fullest, which in his case is not a promise but a warning. "We will assume," he said, "that the grains were not cast from heaven. Someone stood on our stoop with either untidy pockets or theatrical intent. Archie, ascertain whether the door yields any testimony. I took a flashlight and gave the vestibule my attention. The outer stone showed nothing but the scuffs of human life. The brass of the lock had a fine crescent, fresh just below the keyway, as if a tool had kissed and withdrawn. Inside the door, on the small walnut table where callers leave cards they hope we will believe we need, a single shard of crystal winked when the beam slid past. It would have been easy to miss because it didn't belong and was therefore invisible. I lifted it onto my pen. The bolt itself was shot, the chain was set, the inner latch, the one no one but us knows about, was as we had left it. If someone had opened our door, they had not passed far. Back in the office, I deposited the new flake on the saucer. Wolfe's mouth did a thing that in a different man would be called a smile. "Theatrical intent," he repeated. "Foolish, but effective." It means to tell us our perimeter is contested. I saw a coop posted like a hearse that won't go home, I said. If they wanted me to know they were nearby, they could have just sent flowers. Salt, Wolfe said, is the opposite of flowers. He took up the loop, not to touch, only to stare, and lowered it. Taste it. I shook my head. I like my poisons with labels. Phooey. If they intended mischief of that kind, we would not be discussing crystals. He looked at Fritz. You, then? A grain Fritz, being a soldier in a just war, obliged. He put the tip of his tongue to a flake and considered. Clean, he said. Not iodized. See. The finish is bright, then gone. Good for fish. The tin from Salt and Stone is called chef's flake. They sell it with a little wooden spoon you can break if you look at it. That suffices, Wolfe said. The choice is not accidental. Our intruder was either advertising his source or could not help shedding it because he carries his profession in his clothes. If deliberate, it is infantile. If accidental, it narrows the field the chef, I said, or someone who wants me to think chef. Julian Pryor shed temper in a lobby, not salt on a stoop. Do not be too quick, Wolfe murmured. You will see them all tomorrow. Tonight you will call our locksmith in the morning and have him look at the brass, and you will patrol the block. The phone rang then, with the tone that implies it knows when dinner is due. I took it. Ellen Cray's voice had put away court and picked up midnight. 2 things, she said. 1, the medical examiner confirmed the preliminary. Heart. 2, someone left a tin on my doormat. Salt and Stone chef's flake. New. The ribbon uncut, I told her about our garnish. She drew in, held it, and let it go. They're posturing, she said, or they're establishing a language. Either way, I said, they've learned their alphabet. Did you bring the tin in? No. I kicked it under the hedge and watched for 10 minutes. No one reclaimed it. I have the feeling the hedge is insured, and I am not leave it, I told her. If someone retrieves it, it belongs to them. At 9 tomorrow, we'll trade paperwork. Bring a list of who had reason to hate Voss this week, not last year. If the list is more than 1 page, I'll need Fritz to bring lunch. Mr. Goodwin, she said, and the dryness returned. The list is more than a page because last year never ended for Adrian. I'll see you at 9. She paused. Do you think they were inside? On the table, a flake. I'd say the door opened and pride wouldn't let the hand resist. Then lock more things, she said, and hung up. Wolfe had been listening without pretending he wasn't. They are nervous, he said. Nervous men gesture. It aids us. Nervous women, too, I said, thinking of winter white and optics. What do you want first in the morning? The inventory or the man who sells chef tins wholesale? Both, he said, but begin with Miss Cray. Documents permit thought, then see Pryor. A chef's vanity is a trumpet. One can hear it from the rafters. If he is innocent, he will resent our premise. If guilty, he will attempt to own it. After that, Deming. Money's patience is very short, and short patience leaks. Roxanne. In the afternoon, after she has had time to decide how we should see her. We will oblige her by not seeing her that way, I checked my watch. Another pass of the block wouldn't hurt. The air on 35th had the taste of a city that had licked too many batteries. The coop had taken education and left. The grey cousin had returned and was learning to become a lamp post. I let them admire my hat and walked. On the 3rd corner, I doubled back, cut through a delivery alley, and arrived behind them. The driver smoked without burning the cigarette, the way men do when they prefer prop to nicotine. When he finally noticed me noticing him, he did something I didn't expect. He lifted 2 fingers off the wheel in a gesture that wasn't a hello and wasn't a threat. It was, if you like, acknowledgement. Back inside, Fritz had restored the evening to its duties. Wolfe took his place at the table as if the chair had missed him. When I reported the two fingers, Wolfe waved his own once. "They will work to convince us they are competent," he said. "Help them by being slightly more so." "That I can do," I said. "What about the letter?" "We keep circling the salt." "The letter," Wolfe said, "will appear when someone who believes himself prudent becomes greedy. Salt is the announcement, not the act. Eat, Archie. Tomorrow, we stop listening to their announcements and ask our own questions." Morning arrived with the dignity of a bill, and at 9 sharp, the bell did its duty. I'd already phoned our locksmith, who promised to come scold our brass before lunch, and Saul, who promised to keep breathing and watching. Ellen Cray came in with a rigid leather portfolio and the expression of a person who has slept enough to regret it. She sat without prompting and slid the inventory across Wolfe's desk. Every item we touched last night. Times. Initials. On the last page, a list of current adversaries, plaintiffs, ex-employees, vendors, and a blogger who believes Adrian adulterated salt with crushed glass, which is not true and is also efficient libel. Wolfe skimmed like a hawk, fast, decisive, with contempt for rabbits. "This Home Office carton," he said, tapping a line. "Describe it." "Banker's box, manila folders labeled in pencil, one folder marked S&S sourcing, private." "That's new. 2 weeks at most, she wiped a thumb on her skirt as if it had ink." He had begun carrying a small notebook again. He used to, when we were small. He said paper made people honest. Lately, he'd bring it to meetings, write one word and close it. "Where is it?" She gave me a look that expected a joke and got none. "Not in the box. Not on the desk. Not on him." Wolfe's eyes traveled to the saucer at his elbow with the flakes we'd found. He didn't refer to it and didn't need to. "The adversaries?" he said. "Pryor, Hale, Deeming. The blogger can wait. Who among them is impulsive?" "Julian," she said. "He believes in first cuts." "Roxanne believes in optics, so she's never impulsive in public, only in the mirror. Hal Deming believes in cash flow and will suffocate any sentiment that interrupts it." "Good," Wolfe said. "Mr. Goodwin will see Pryor first. He will not discuss salt unless Pryor insists upon it. He will then go to Deming. Miss Hale can ferment alone until 3. Your price schedule?" She produced it. He didn't look. "Very well. You will inform no one that you have been here this morning and will not confirm to anyone that Mr. Voss's letter existed." She stood, then sat again. "Do you think the letter did exist?" Wolfe made a small sound. I prefer to be annoyed by facts. "Archie." I took the portfolio's copies and Miss Cray to the door. On the stoop, I used the broom we keep for democracy and found no new crystals. "Good." The locksmith arrived as she left, a lean man with a soft spot for bolts. He whistled at the crescent under our keyway. "Somebody cozied up with a tryout," he said. "Didn't commit. You had it chained. They got joy from the kiss and fled. No bumping, no pick. Which means a key," I said. "Or a very good actor who panicked," he said, "and did something to our temper that made it feel better." Salt and Stone Chelsea smelled like steel, citrus, and ambition. It was prep hour. Knives were talking. I asked for Julian Pryor and was told he was making a stock he'd invented, which was encouraging for a conversation about honesty. He came out bareheaded, forearms sheened, eyes bright like a man in love with heat. If he remembered my face from the lobby, he didn't let it slow him. "Miss Cray's friend," he said. "You still not here?" "I'm still not," I said. "You were expecting the desk to give you keys and grace. You got policy and a headache. You said ink is a trap. Let's talk about paper." He wiped his hands and didn't offer his towel. Adrian wrote to himself. He liked to make lists that scared him into doing things. I told him to stop. Paper leaks. "What did he write last?" I asked. Ask the paper, he said, and almost smiled. We had a fight on Monday. Hal wants to open 3 more locations. I want better fish. Roxanne wants a TV series where I pretend to teach while we sell aprons. Adrian wanted to be everything. He told me there was a rot somewhere we weren't seeing. I told him the rot is the part where you sell a $15 potato and call it art. He had a temper, but his temper looked at the clock. He was due back on the line and resented that the line needed him. I watched the pocket seam of his jacket when he shrugged it on. The white had a faint freckle of translucent plates along the hem. You could miss it if you believed kitchens were clean rooms. You shed, I said. Salt, he agreed. We sell it. We use it. We glorify it. It's cheaper than sainthood and more reliable. Is there a point? You left none at my door, I said. But someone did. He went still. A fraction. Someone is playing theater, he said, and then he showed his teeth, not as a smile. We are a theater. Corner table at 7. People watch people. But this. He flicked his fingers, a modest imitation of the gesture I'd gotten from the wheel last night. This is a joke that ends with a knife. We are not friends, Mr. Goodwin, but I respected Adrian. If Deming or Roxanne pull stunts on your stoop, I will salt their graves. He went back through the swinging door with a push that made the steel consider its options. The freckled hem made a soft hiss. I called Saul on the sidewalk. He had news. He always does when you want him not to. The grey sedan registered to a company that often registers things for Deming's main fund, he said. The coupe's tag folds into the same laundry. They're not being shy. Deming, then, I said, and took a cab to a midtown tower with an atrium that believed in light as a disinfectant. Hal Deming kept offices behind glass that tried to make him a philosophy. He was compact, trim, with the air of a man who accepts gravity as a competitor. His assistant handed me canned water and a survey disguised as a greeting. I ignored both and gave her my card. When Deming came out, he didn't pretend to be surprised. Miss Cray's investigator, he said. He had a good voice, calm with a sanded edge. Our loss is everyone's loss. How can I be useful without becoming the subject of a headline? You can tell me if you sent a car to watch a brownstone on 35th Street, I said. And why? I don't send cars, he said. I employ people who employ cars. If one of them got bored, I will see he's paid less for it. His eyes didn't leave mine. Adrian was my partner. I'm entitled to notice when unknown men dip their hands into my business. You're not entitled to my doorstep, I said, and you're not unknown to me. If you're looking for a letter addressed to my employer, you're wasting your day. His gaze moved almost an inch, which in his world was panic. A letter, he said. Is that what we're calling it? We're calling it gone, I said. And if you had it, you wouldn't be using cars like lampposts. He breathed, a shallow one. I appreciate economy, Mr. Goodwin. Here is mine. I have no letter. I have the suspicion that someone is rehearsing an exit. If Adrian intended to expose an arrangement, whoever benefited most will now assert grief in public and erase paper in private. If I learn which way they ran, I will let you know, out of pragmatism. Pragmatism is my favorite charity, I said. One more. Who sold you tins of Chef's Flake last month in bulk? He smiled with only his mouth. Everyone, he said. We are salt and stone. We buy salt. We sell salt. Sometimes we spill it. Back on the street, I called Wolfe. He listened, punctuating with silence. When I mentioned Deming flinching at the word letter, he said, Good, as if he had ordered it. Come home. Miss Hale will arrive at 3. She has requested it. We will permit her to believe that was our idea. I made it back with 20 minutes to spare and used 10 of them telling Wolfe what Deming had and hadn't said. He let the water climb toward a boil and never once lifted the lid. When I got to the part about Deming flinching at letter, he half nodded, which on that subject was a parade. "At 3 she arrives," he said. "Do not seat her until I do." I don't usually rehearse chairs, but I got the room tidy and uninteresting, magazine straight, globe latched, Fritz's tray with coffee cups waiting like innocent bystanders. The saucer with our souvenir flakes I shifted to the corner of my desk, not because I was embarrassed by our decor, but because show and tell is for school children. If Miss Hale wanted props, she could bring her own. She came to the minute, which I had expected. Public relations learns timekeeping at finishing school. Roxanne Hale didn't wear white today. She wore a gray that would not admit dust, had ever existed. Her entrance said she knew where cameras should be and had brought a spare. She let me offer the red leather chair and declined with a smile that explained she looked better standing until the lead entered. Wolfe entered, and she sat. "I regret the loss," she said, before names, as if grief could be placed like a centerpiece. Adrian was kinetic. Wolfe looked at her as one regards a phrase in a language one refuses to learn. "I am Nero Wolfe." "You are Miss Hale. Mr. Goodwin has seen you pass through a lobby. That suffices. You wanted this interview. You have it. If you attempt to manage it, we will be done." Her smile didn't crack. It refiled itself. "Then I'll be blunt. There is a story forming. Multiple, really. A visionary dies at the breach between expansion and consolidation. Rumors sprout. If the wrong story wins, everyone loses. Jobs, value, lives. I want the true story to win." "I'm told you value truth." "I value accuracy," Wolfe said. "Truth is an elastic word, Ms. Hale. Elastic words leave marks when they snap." She folded her hands on her knee where the cameras could admire them even if none were present. "I'm here because someone is sprinkling theater." There was a tin at Miss Cray's door. She told me because I asked her to, at 1 a.m., when lawyers pretend they sleep. Someone thinks salt is a signature. It is not. It is a commodity. That someone is vulgar, and I would like him stopped. "If vulgarity were my charge," Wolfe said, "I would require a larger house." "What do you know of a letter addressed to me that was on Mr. Voss's desk at noon yesterday and was gone by 8:30? Her eyes didn't move, which means they moved later. "I know rumor. I know Adrian liked the drama of envelopes. I know if there was a letter to you, and if someone took it, he did it because he wanted to audition as a villain. That is amateur night names," Wolfe said. "Julian Pryor is a genius with heat and an infant with impulse," she said promptly. "Hal Deming is disciplined to the last decimal and will not risk a public misstep. Veronica, Adrian's ex, has motive only if revenge pays alimony, which it doesn't. The superintendent is grieving, and superintendents do not steal letters to Nero Wolfe. They tell their wives. The nephew carries boxes and dreams. The housekeeper is what she looks like, tired. If you want someone who has the appetite for a gesture and the ego to think it is art, look at Julian." She had come to serve that plate. I let it sit. "Who knew Adrian had started a sourcing private folder?" I asked. "Who would that threaten?" She didn't blink. "Anyone who confuses supply chains with fairy tales. We make a thing called salt and stone. People imagine we plucked it from a sainted beach. In reality, there are ships, brokers, middlemen, and a man in a cap who writes numbers on a clipboard with the same pencil. Your grandfather used to bet on horses. If Adrian decided to re-audit the romance, someone who benefits from the fog would object." "Names," Wolfe said again, less patient. "Vendors," she said. "Not partners. Not me." The phone line on my desk clicked twice, a ring for the upstairs extension. I left it and looked at her hands. She wore no ring, a watch that didn't tick, and along the hem of that disciplined grey, a faint dusting no camera would see unless it loved her too much. Not plates like Malden, but powder, matte and fine. She crossed her legs and a single speck fell to the carpet and died. You handle product on set, I asked. Open tins for the photographer? Or is your assistant allowed to touch things? Her smile finally made a sound. We all touch things. It's a business, Miss Hale, Wolfe said. Have you at any time employed a car to watch my door? No, she said. Hal did. Or someone for him. And if you think I don't know, then you think less of me than I do. Do you know who left salt on my stoop? If I did, she said, I would have told a different story in this room. The phone clicked twice again. Wolfe gave me a look that meant use it or I will. I picked up. Saul didn't bother with hello. Hedge retrieval, he said. 1 p.m. sharp. Woman in a black hoodie, 5 to 6, alone. She didn't look up. She took the tin from under the shrub at Cray's and walked east. Lost her at the station, but she tapped her metro with a corporate card. The name on the account is Stone Frame Media. I could feel Miss Hale watching me not react. Thanks, I told Saul, and hung up. Stone Frame Media, I said, and gave it to her as if it belonged to both of us. That's our production company, she said, almost bored. Adrian's, mine, Deming's, on paper. We rent space, rent people, rent light and apparently retrieve props, I said. Her control was good. It kept its balance. Then someone on our payroll is an idiot, she said, and I'll discover which by dinner time. No, Wolfe said as if the word were a temperature. You will do nothing by dinner time. You will go back to your office and you will speak to no one on this subject until you speak to Mr. Goodwin tomorrow at 10. If you have a name to give, you will give it then. If you disobey, I will instruct Ms. Cray to take a position hostile to your interests. That was a new card. He rarely waves a client like a stick. Roxanne weighed it, found it real, and nodded once. Understood. She stood, and as she did, her hand drifted, casual like the back of a swan's wing, toward the corner of Wolfe's desk. In that corner sat Fritz's decanter coaster, onyx and glossy, a circle no one uses but everyone touches. Her fingers rode its rim, lifted it a 1/4 inch, and set it down so minutely askew that you'd need to live here to know. I do. When the door closed, behind her, I nudged it back and told Wolfe. He grunted. We have reached the phase, he said, where everyone demonstrates reach. And leaves a flake where pride can see, I said. He drew a breath that smelled like impatience and time. Call Miss Cray. Inform her that Stone Frame Media performs errands for rogues. Then find the nephew, Dino, I said. Why him? Because Ms. Hale denied him too quickly, he said, and because a nephew who carries boxes learns what weight feels like. Sometimes he wishes to carry less. He lifted the saucer at last, not to touch, but to make sure it was still there. Also, Archie, have Mr. Panzer examine Metro video if he can. I would like the idiot to have a face before he has a name. I got Saul moving and myself too. In the hall, I paused at the door and checked the brass. It shone where the locksmith had scolded it. On the mat, there were no flakes, but as I swung the door wide, a grain rolled from the hinge and clicked on wood, small as a pin and twice as pointed. I caught it on a fingernail and took it back in. They are frugal, I said. They're using every part of the joke. Good, Wolfe said. We will use every part of them. Dino Rizzo worked in the belly where buildings keep their nerves. I found him in a basement corridor with a mop that had lost hope and a radio that thought salsa could save it. He was 23 going on immortal, narrow shoulders, quick eyes. One of those kids' New York issues to superintendents as standard. You Archie? He asked, like he was deciding if the syllables would behave. Goodwin, I said. Your uncle is the man with keys. You're the man who carries boxes. He ran a hand over hair that had learned its shape from a cap. Miss Cray told me you'd come ask dumb and smart in the same breath. I tried to give value, I said. You moved a box. Then you moved it back. Between those two dances, did anyone get past you who shouldn't? He shifted, which meant yes then pretended it meant no. Lobby was a zoo. People who never spoke to me in 3 years remembered my name and what a good guy I am. The chef yelled. The lady in grey talked like a podcast. The investor's driver offered to smooth an errand, his words, and I told him I didn't iron. The letter? He made a face. I saw it at noon. Big paper. Fancy Nero Wolfe in handwriting you could shave with. At 8:30. Gone. I didn't take it. I wouldn't know what to do with it. Reading is a lost art, I agreed. 2 nights ago, did anyone from Stone Frame Media ask you to do a kindness? Like a 5-minute bathroom break on the 7th floor? He stopped pretending to have nowhere to go. A girl, he said finally. Black hoodie. Little. Said she left a charger on 9 during a shoot, and would I be a prince? I told her the only princes in this place are on TV. She smiled like I'd passed her. Test and left. Today at 1 p.m., I said. Same hoodie picked up a tin from under a hedge at Ms. Cray's. Then she took the subway with somebody else's card. The somebody else was Stone Frame. The girl's name, if it helps, is probably on a call sheet. He met my eyes for a count. Man, you people work fast. Sometimes we even work well, I said. Tell me something useful. The building keys. Unc keeps the master in a box in his office with a lock that's older than me, he said. He wears his own copy. I had one for the freight, not for apartments. Yesterday we were in and out for hours. My key, his. You want to hear I made a copy? He shrugged. I didn't. The machine at the bodega can't fake this brass. You have cameras. In the lobby and the alley. I'm not the cops. No, I said. You're a kid who doesn't like being tested. If you think of how the letter walked, call me before you call a man with a badge. He nodded and had to go find where the radio had left the beat. In the alley I phoned Saul. He was in a place with screens and boredom. Hoodie has a name, he said. Maya Pike. Stone Frame production assistant. 26. Metro shows her picking up the tin and putting it in a tote. With her, a guy whose face the camera loves less. Tall, cap, beard that's never eaten soup. They transfer at 59th. Maya goes to Astoria. The guy gets off at 5th/53rd and vanishes into office land. Stone Frame's offices are midtown, I said. I'll go ask how much they pay for tots to fetch salt. Stone Frame rented a floor in a building that specialized in glass you don't touch. The reception had a plant that had never met dirt and a woman whose smile ran on batteries. I gave her my card and asked for the production coordinator. A man with a lanyard and the gait of a permanent Tuesday took me aside to a corner where optimism couldn't hear us. Maya's on an errand, he said. So I gather, I said. On camera, even. Who sends PAs to lawyers' hedges. He tried a shape that wanted to be offended and couldn't make weight. We do shoots. We do drops. A client calls. We send someone. We don't send them to hedges. Then someone used your account like a costume, I said. Which of your clients likes props that look like tins? Salt and Stone. He swallowed. The lanyard bounced. We support their content, yes. If a PA did a personal favor, it's not on my sheet. Show me your sheet, I said. He didn't, because he's not built to do that, but he left his eyes-only schedule on the desk when the phone rang. It was enough. 3 o'clock yesterday. B-roll SNS UWS. Props pull, chef's flake tins X8. 1 p.m. today. Errand return props. Next to it, a line with no initials, no code, just an underline like a secret had tried to pass unnoticed and tripped. When he came back, I thanked him for his transparency and left him to write an email to someone named Claire about tightening releases. Outside, I called Wolfe. Roxanne's shop sent a girl to collect theatre. I told him, we have a name. And if she was under orders, she wasn't Roxanne's. Roxanne is too careful to leave the underline deeming, Wolfe said. Or Pryor. Mr. Deming controls budgets. He can access the card. Mr. Pryor controls kitchens. He can access tins. The intersection is a television camera. He paused. Come home. I hopped 2 cabs because I didn't like the look of the first driver's curiosity and because habit sometimes enjoys waste. The brownstone's door felt obedient. The hall smelled of lemons and authority. In the kitchen, Fritz was not emitting the prayers he reserves for veal he trusts and fish that deserve to die. Instead, he was staring at a row of glass jars with the look a priest gives a crooked candle. Something is moved, he said without greeting. Not the place. The contents, he held up a jar labeled Camargue, fleur de sel, inside delicate pyramids that were not Camargue. Malden, I said. He nodded once. Mine are not here. Someone exchanged. The lid was off and on. It is clumsy and insulting. In this house, I said. Both are crimes. I took the jar like it might betray me further and brought it to the office. Wolfe didn't need the saucer. He took one glance and bared a half-inch of tooth that did not denote joy. They have entered, he said. Not merely kissed our brass. Kitchen, I told him. Salt swapped? Of course. He shut his eyes and made his own swap inside his head. Appetites for tactics. We are past symbols. We will answer, how? By arranging perception, he said. Telephone Mr. Deming and invite him at 8. Telephone Mr. Pryor and invite him at 8:15. Ms. Hale at 8:30. The superintendent at 8:45. Ms. Cray is already ours, and ask Saul to sit in our alley with his patients. Whoever has escalated will not resist watching himself be named. And if he tries to add seasoning before dessert, I asked. Wolfe opened his eyes. They were not amused. Then he will learn the difference between a kitchen and my house. At 7, I walked the block twice with the kind of aimless intention that makes watchers nervous and called Saul to tune his patience. He was already in the alley behind the houses across from us, where the delivery trucks pretend the city is a farm. His voice was the same temperature as late evening. He had the alley, the fire escape sight line, and a thermos that gives coffee ideas above its station. Inside, Fritz had performed a small exorcism on the kitchen and set a clean jar in the exact angle where the Camargue lives, as if geometry could soothe insult. He announced that dinner would be respectable but defensive, which in his theology means no sauces a vandal could ruin with one pinch. Wolfe approved, which was his way of promising to retain his equilibrium. At 8, the bell did what we pay it for. Hal Deming arrived in a suit that solved more equations than it asked, and a face pre-tuned to cooperation. I took him to the office and left him to learn that Wolfe does not rise for money. Deming chose the red chair, crossed his legs, and let his heel rest an inch off the carpet, a man who practices hovering. He had the faintest smear of graphite on his thumb. Some men leave a board meeting and put their hands in their pockets. Deming had found a pencil first. You have me first, he said, looking at Wolfe with the respect a man feels for a mountain he can't move. What can I clarify? Wolfe didn't answer him. He never starts with the volunteer. He said, Archie, and that was my cue to sit where Deming could see the door and think about the value of exits. At 8:15, Julian Pryor came in with the smell of heat on him, as if he had stopped at a stove to remember who he was. He had changed jackets, but not moods. His eyes marked Deming, moved to me, and refused Wolfe until they had to accept him. You didn't tell me it was a panel, he said. There will be as many chairs as the matter requires, Wolfe said. Sit. Julian sat as if chairs had lately disappointed him. He had a white dot on his lapel I could have sworn was Malden until he saw me see it and pinched it away with a finger that didn't quite hide its tremor. At 8:30, Roxanne Hale appeared without a camera, but not without the idea of one. She offered Deming a glance that would read as solidarity across a conference table, and Pryor a glance that would read as weather across a beach. To Wolfe, she offered nothing but posture. I put her where Wolfe could watch her watch the men. At 8:42, because his life has beats he can't control, Anthony Rizzo arrived with a hat he remembered to remove in the vestibule and a worry he forgot to. He took his seat like a man accepts a cast on an ankle, resentful but obedient. He had scrubbed his hands. The rings of pink at his knuckles told me he had confronted something that didn't come off the first time. Wolfe took the room. He does it without moving. His voice got lower, which in him is volume. This house has been trespassed upon, by gesture and by hand, he said. A letter addressed to me was stolen from a dead man's desk before the room that held it was secured. We will recover the letter, or its contents. We will do so tonight if possible, or tomorrow at the latest. Between now and 9 o'clock you will help me willingly, or you will do it unwillingly. Deming's heel lowered. Pryor leaned forward. Roxanne didn't. Her stillness tightened instead, which is a choice. Rizzo swallowed. The salt, Wolfe said mildly, was infantile. Whoever chose it believed in implication and would be hurt if the implication were misread. First, Mr. Deming, you employed watchers for my door. Indirectly, Deming said, with the honesty of a man who knows when lying would only be a hobby. They were asked to observe movement, not to trespass. They observed their own reflections, Wolfe said. You are a careful man. Your offense is not in temperament. Why did you flinch at the word letter? Deming's eyes moved 8 inches left and returned. Because if Adrian had written a letter to you rather than called, it meant he believed what he had found was both sensitive and theatrical. He would not write you about a vendor dispute. He would write you about a betrayal. Good, Wolfe said. We agree on our terms. Mr. Pryor, you are as impulsive as Mr. Deming is disciplined. If you want me to apologize for being alive, I'll need a script, Julian said. If I wanted to scare you, I'd cook you fish without salt and watch you cry. You salted my kitchen, Wolfe said, lazy and exact. The chef's face put its bravado away and showed the boy from an old tenement who had learned heat the way other boys learned math. No, he said, the word bare. I don't walk into other cooks' houses. Not even to fight. I didn't put a damn thing in your jars. Rizzo's gaze jerked as if a string had been pulled. He looked at his scrubbed hands. Wolfe pivoted a fraction. Mr. Rizzo. Keys? The superintendent licked his lip. I locked. I checked. My nephew. Leave your nephew to Mr. Goodwin, Wolfe said, which was the kindest suspension I've heard in a while. Yesterday, a woman who works for Stone Frame Media retrieved a tin of salt from Ms. Cray's hedge. Mr. Deming, your fund pays Stone Frame. Ms. Hale, your company uses its card. Neither of you will speak. The retrieval was not for you. It was for someone who believed props can be destiny. Mr. Pryor, when you left the lobby last night, where did you go? Kitchen, he said. Where else is there to go when you're not allowed to take the papers of a man you cooked beside for 10 years? Miss Hale. Home, she said, and then back out, because truth doesn't keep office hours. The phone on my desk tapped twice. Saul. I didn't look at it because everyone was looking at Wolfe. He said, Mr. Goodwin, without looking at me, and I picked up. Present for you, Saul said. Our bearded cap from the subway just tried your back door. He's got a toolkit a cat could swallow and the common sense of a gnat. He's learning how to sit in your kitchen with his hands on the table. Bring him in, I said, and hung up. Wolfe didn't sigh. He let the room do it for him. We will have a new guest, he told them. Do not be alarmed. He is the kind of man who believes locks should be flattered. Roxanne's composure did a small calculation and found a variable it didn't own. Deming's jaw set. Pryor looked like he'd like something to swing at and knew better. Rizzo muttered, "Ah, Jesus," as if he had been warned by a mother he hadn't visited enough. Fritz opened from the hall and then again from the back. because Saul can be in two places at once. The bearded man wasn't large, but he was eager, the way raccoons are when they've discovered foil. Saul had given him the minimum advice necessary to reach a chair. He put the toolkit on the table as if obedience could make it turn into a wallet. I took the kit and set it by my desk. Wolfe let the silence grow until the man started to speak, and then cut him off with a small lift of fingers. "No names from you," he said. "You don't own one yet. You belong, for the moment, to whoever pays your day rate. The person to whom you belong this evening will be named at 9 o'clock. The bearded man looked at the people, which is how you teach amateurs. His eyes touched Deming and moved on, touched Pryor and wondered, rested half a beat on Roxanne, and tried to decide if she was a decoy. They landed on Rizzo as if expecting a working man's kinship and found instead the flat refusal of a door. "We will proceed," Wolfe said. "Mr. Goodwin, take the gentleman to the kitchen and see if he recognizes the difference between Camargue and Maldon. Fritz will assist. Miss Hale, while Mr. Goodwin is gone, I will ask you a question you will not answer by arranging my sentence. Mr. Deming, restrain your impulse to economize. Mr. Pryor, refrain from dramatics. Mr. Rizzo, stop scrubbing your hands. Guilt is not a stain you can remove with soap." "Which leaves me what?" Rizzo asked. "Raw." "Memory," Wolfe said, "and at last, precision." I stood and touched the bearded man's elbow. He rose with the loose resistance of a body that thinks it might still run. In the hall he tried a grin that would have worked on a barista. "Bad night for a visit?" he offered. "Bad house for it," I said. "Come learn about salt." Fritz had set 2 ramekins on the butcher block like a teacher laying out chalk. He pointed to the left. "Camargue," he said. "To the right, Malden." He didn't look at our visitor. He looked at the salts as if one had wronged him and the other had witnessed it. The bearded man tried another of those grins and let it fall. He glanced at the toolkit on my chair and then back to the ramekins as if they might open and swallow him. "What is this, a quiz?" "Only in the sense that I intend to grade it," I told him. "Use your fingers like a human." Which is which? He pinched a flake from the right, put it to his tongue, and gave a theatrical wince that would have got him written up on any set. "Sharp, big plates." "Malden," Fritz said. "Flat. Continue." The left he barely touched, and then pretended he could tell. "Delicate," he said. "Smaller." "Fancy Camargue," Fritz said. Then, "He does not know." The actor could not replace. "My salt, I rested a hip against the counter." "Good. That means you weren't the chef in our kitchen. So what were you supposed to be tonight besides a very small embarrassment?" He watched my face and decided it had no loose tiles. "Collect," he said. "If there's an envelope in the kitchen, envelope," I repeated. "There won't be." "But you just made yourself useful. Who told you there might be one?" He swallowed like the word had edges. "A woman." "Claire." "I don't know her last name. We all just—" "Claire, the coordinator." He flicked his eyes at the door, toward whatever room he thought names were safer in. "She said if I could slip the lock, check the counter by the big jars, take an envelope if there's one, and leave a pinch so we'd know it happened." Fritz's breath came in through his nose in a long line. "Savages," he said softly. "Phone," I told the raccoon. "Face down, no gymnastics." He had the device ready. This wasn't his first confiscation. In messages, Claire was a C and Gray with a last name in the preview that would have disappointed the optimistic. Frawley. The thread had the tone civilized people use when ordering sandwiches. 7:52 p.m. Door, alley, should be simple. Counter by black stove. Look for craft envelope, take. Leave flake. If blocked, leave. No hero above it, earlier. Same card as prop run. Bill to SF. Call Meyer if stuck. "May I?" Fritz asked, and I slid the phone over. He read the words like ingredients, then handed it back with the care he gives knives. "What's your job description when you're not breaking into houses?" I asked. "Grip. Sometimes utility. I hang lights. I'm not a burglar." "Tonight you auditioned," I said. "Flunked." He sagged enough to look his height. "I need the day rate," he said, which was a biography. "Where is Claire now?" "At the office," he said. "She lives there." "If she's not there, she's at S&S or on a set." "Good," I said. "We'll keep you until 9. I pocketed the phone. "You get to be a prop for once." Back in the office, Wolfe hadn't moved so much as a punctuation mark, but the air had picked up a current. I set the phone on my desk and the toolkit on the floor under my foot. Roxanne's eyes took in the device and did nothing else. Deming's thumb rubbed the graphite without help from his other hand. Pryor's nostrils flared. Rizzo's mouth went small. "Claire Frawley," I said. "Stone Frame's coordinator. She sent our guest to check the kitchen for a craft envelope and instructed him to leave a pinch. She billed it to Stone Frame's card and gave him Maya as a helpline. An envelope in the kitchen suggests someone believes we store bread on the counter. We don't," Wolfe said. "We break it with dinner." "Mr. Deming?" Deming adjusted nothing. "Claire is an employee," he said. "She follows direction." He didn't add whose. Wolfe let the omission sit and swell. "Ms. Hale," he said. Roxanne breathed like a trained swimmer. Quiet, rhythmic. "Claire's job is to solve and not ask why," she said. "Someone told her, pick up a prop. She'd do it. It doesn't mean the prop existed, or the person who told her knew what it was." She looked at the bearded man as if weighing whether he could carry a brand. "Who typed that line? Was it Claire, or was it copied from a Slack? Show me the origin, and I'll tell you the author." "Later," Wolfe said. "Mr. Pryor." Julian's hands were open on his knees, palms up as if to show flour he didn't have. "I don't know this Claire," he said. "My world is fire and pans. If I wanted a letter, I would have come myself and told your door its mother raised a fool." Rizzo shifted. Wolfe watched him until the superintendent had to see it. "Mr. Rizzo," Wolfe said, "you have worn the shape of shame since you came in. Your hands are clean. Your keys are not." Anthony Rizzo's eyes went to the toolkit like it might confess on his behalf. "Last week," he said, "the TV people came to the building. They needed the roof and a hallway, or they would explode. Claire. She has a badge and a schedule, and she looks at you like she's already passed you. She asked for the service pass for 5 minutes for a restroom on 9. For talent, she says, and I know what that means. And it's never the restroom. I said no. Then she says it's a favor for Adrian, and, well, he was still breathing, and he'd tipped everybody in this place once. So I walked them up. I kept the pass. At least I think I did. After, he rubbed his knuckles again like skin could become memory. Yesterday, when the ambulance, Claire's girl was around again, hoodie. I didn't let her anywhere. But the lobby was, I don't know who had eyes. You had the pass, Wolfe said. You believe you kept it. But someone had the door, Rizzo nodded. Small. God help me, he said. If they got past me. They did it because I tried to be decent. No, Wolfe said, because you believed competence could be borrowed. He leaned back, which with him is movement. We have enough. Not to accuse, but to arrange. The bearded man lifted his head an inch. Am I going to jail? He asked, trying to make it a joke and failing. No, Wolfe said, as if that settled the matter for all courts. You will sit and learn something. I handed Deming the phone screen and watched him watch it. His mouth made a line and his eyes tightened a shade. Claire answers to me on budget, he said. She doesn't act on content. He handed it to Roxanne. She held it a beat too long, enough to demonstrate that she could. Pryor didn't ask to see it. Rizzo didn't either. Saul's 2 knocks came from the hall. All clear. He can run if we want him to, and he won't. Wolfe opened his eyes wider. At 9, he said. We will complete the arrangement. Mr. Goodwin, call Ms. Cray and inform her she is required. Tell her to bring Voss's pocket notebooks if she has them, or to admit she doesn't. Ask Mr. Panzer to put eyes on Ms. Frawley and to bring her in politely at 9:05 if she considers herself busy. Mr. Rizzo, you will sit and stop regretting. It makes a stench. Mr. Deming, you will control your impulse to dismiss staff and will not call Claire. Miss Hale, you will not attempt to get ahead of my narrative. If you do, you will find yourself behind it. Mr. Pryor, do not salt anything. Julian's lips twitched. I brought nothing, he said. You all brought yourselves, Wolfe said. It is sufficient. He looked at me. Archie. I was already moving. The line to Ellen rang twice and found her. Bring anything of Voss's that fits a pocket, I said, and your patience. You're about to watch grown professionals pretend they didn't hire a raccoon. On my way, she said, dry and awake. In the hall, Fritz closed the kitchen door and came to stand beside me, not because he feared for his jars now, but because he enjoys a performance with an audience that knows when to clap. In the office, Wolfe settled, immovable. The bearded man stared at his hands, learning stillness. Deming examined the space where his heel hovered and kept it down. Roxanne smoothed an invisible thread on her skirt hem, with a fingertip dusted the faintest matte powder. Julian breathed. Rizzo didn't scrub. 9 was close enough to taste. Wolfe, without moving, had set the table. 9 o'clock came as if the clocks had conspired with Wolfe, which they often do. Ellen Cray arrived with her portfolio heavier than before, her coat unbuttoned to show she had no hands free for sleight of hand. Saul followed, ushering in a young woman who wore fatigue like it was a scarf. Claire Frawley, the coordinator. She looked like she'd spent the last hour rearranging excuses into neat piles. I gave her a chair that didn't flatter her posture and took my own post. Wolfe let the room breathe, then flattened it. We are here because Adrian Voss wrote a letter he did not live to send. That letter was addressed to me. It vanished between noon and 8:30 yesterday. Instead of words, we have salt, on a stoop, in a jar, under a hedge. Infantile posturing. But posturing is revealing. It tells me who believed the letter contained something dangerous and who feared it enough to try a performance on my threshold. He looked at Claire as if she were a catalogue entry. You sent a man to my kitchen tonight. She met his gaze with something like bravery. I was told, phooey, you were told nothing that excuses trespass. You were told to act as if props could conceal crime. Whose order? Her eyes flicked to Deming, then Hale, then back to her own lap. That was enough for Wolfe. Mr. Deming, you fund Stone Frame. You employed watchers. You could have instructed her, but your economy forbids waste. You do not send raccoons for envelopes that may not exist. Ms. Hale, you perform image. You knew better than to dabble with kitchen jars. Your offense is cosmetic, not strategic. Mr. Pryor, you are impulsive, but not subtle. You do not hire PAs to mimic burglars. You would have banged on my door yourself. Julian snorted softly, a reluctant agreement. Wolfe swiveled half an inch. Weight of a planet. Mr. Rizzo. The superintendent flinched like the name had teeth. I didn't. You gave access last week when Miss Frawley invoked Voss's name. You regretted it and tried to scrub regret away. But that was not your crime. Yours was merely convenience. No, the true hand behind this charade belongs to someone who could both invoke Adrian's name and insist the fiction be played out. He turned to Ellen Cray. Miss Cray, your client trusted you. You had keys. You directed the removal of boxes. You saw the letter at noon, you admit, and by 8:30, gone. No one had better access than you. No one had stronger motive to erase Adrian's last words than the attorney who might be incriminated by them. Her face didn't break, but her fingers clenched the portfolio like it contained her pulse. That's absurd. No, Wolfe said. It is inevitable. Adrian was about to expose a putrid arrangement. That arrangement was not in kitchens or branding optics. It was in contracts, in paper. He was beginning a folder. Sourcing private. The danger was not overpriced salt, but misdirected funds, settlements buried, retainers inflated. You kept him out of worse trouble, you told us. Indeed, you ensured his troubles never reached a courtroom. The letter was to me because he had realized his own lawyer had become the rot. The room breathed once, sharp. Deeming leaned back. Julian sat forward. Roxanne's eyes narrowed in satisfaction, not entirely hidden. Rizzo just looked stunned, as if betrayal had been hiding in his hallway all along. You took the letter, Wolfe said. You thought to stage a diversion with tins and flakes to suggest a petty vandal's theater. You even brought us a heavy inventory this morning, a magician's flourish, overcompensated paper to disguise the one sheet you removed. But you overlooked the obvious. Voss would never have entrusted his final words to an envelope without also inscribing a twin, his pocket notebook, which, Miss Cray, you did not bring tonight because you know it condemns you. Her breath came thin. You can't prove. Proof is for courts. I provide knowledge. That is enough. Wolfe's eyes closed, then opened, heavy with disdain. You betrayed your client and your office. You made of his death an opportunity to secure yourself. Now you will leave this house. You may choose to surrender the notebook to the Utah authorities tomorrow, or they will extract it from you by warrant. Archie will see you out. She rose like the air had thickened, clutching her portfolio, her face drawn but still holding its lines. No denial, no outburst, only the brittle pride of someone caught but not yet broken. I walked her to the door. She didn't look back. The sedan that had idled for nights was waiting to take her to whatever reckoning she preferred. When I returned, Wolfe had not moved. He didn't need to. The suspects remained in their chairs, but the fight had gone out of them. Deming's heel touched carpet. Julian stared at his palms. Roxanne, inscrutable, smoothed her skirt again. Rizzo's hands were empty. You are free, Wolfe said. Go and stop performing for yourselves. They filed out, each carrying their own version of relief or resentment. Saul took the raccoon by the elbow and vanished him into the night, his toolkit under arm like a child's lunch. At last, the brownstone exhaled. Fritz appeared to ask if dinner could be redeemed. Wolfe told him yes, then leaned back, shutting his eyes. It is despicable, he said finally. A lawyer who eats her client's trust for her own sustenance. Salt in the wound indeed. Betrayal is the most vulgar seasoning. He reached for his glass, raised it, and drank. I let the silence stand a moment, then said, Well, at least nobody salted the soup. His eyes opened, half a glare, half an unwilling grin. Archie, he said, spare me. And that was that. The brownstone held its breath, then settled. Dinner was served. The world outside could keep its salt. Inside, we still had flavor enough.